Mm. Hey, man. I think so. Oh. Cool. It's live 2 seconds ago. DM in the PM. Nice.
All right, here we go. So, this is the first stream of DM and the PM, uh, a talk show about all things tabletop and nerdly. Today we have my first ever dungeon master, uh, Matt Amoroso, who's also, a mentor on other levels. He was my physics teacher as well. So yeah, that's
Thank,
cool.
thank you for having me, Dylan. I'm very excited and happy to be first.
Absolutely. I couldn't think of a better first. All right. So,
How long ago was it that we met? You were a freshman, huh?
yeah, so that's long ago. So I graduated in 2010. That's 9 years ago.
So
Minus.
2006.
Yeah. Yep. So,
Yeah, that was my first. That was my very first year at TA. So I've been there 13 years.
yeah, and I've grown just marginally since that point.
You used to swear like a sailor. I learned a lot of brand new swear words from you, if I remember correctly, which is saying something because I was an expert before I met you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of a sailor, to say the least. So, uh, yeah, so let's kick it off here. So, I think I'll probably go over the structure a couple of times in the beginning, just so people get used to it. So the plan is I'm going to be monitoring chat. We're going to be looking at chat, Discord, and on the stream. So if you guys have any questions or comments, whatever, if you want to chime in, go ahead. We're going to go ahead and discuss the topic a little bit. And yeah, and then if you're in the Discord, you can ask to jump in on the voice chat if you wish. So in that case, I will bring you into the locked channel. You can actually participate via voice if you have 2 cents or whatever. And yeah, and that's how we're gonna do it. So if anybody jumps in, make sure tell them go on the Discord.
Right on.
All right. So first,
Is there a link to that Discord on the Twitch page?
yes, yep, right on the Twitch page. Oops. Un momento here. I also had to, yeah, I don't have it up. I am going to get the commands. I just don't have them active yet. So, it's a little bit laggy here, but let's see what we can do. So the first topic, talking about, what is the difference between gaming, like video games, and role-playing?
It's funny when I grew up, computers weren't much of a thing yet. Certainly not video games. So when like the first time I saw the subreddit R Gaming, I get all pissy because it's like, well, the video games aren't the only type of gaming. I called it gaming my whole life, but I've actually become more enamored with calling it role playing than gaming anyway.
Yeah, it's I used to be kind of a munchkin, and I'm sure you probably remember a little bit. We were talking about it last night. I used to play in a Champions game of his, and needless to say, nobody wanted to fight because this was kind of like a PvP story, whatever. Uh, no one wanted to fight because I was just like so mechanically strong that it just didn't happen to have any weaknesses. And yeah, I used to be kind of more. I don't know. I'm still tactical, especially when I run games, when I do stuff, but um, I think I've backed off quite a bit. I'm not a min maxer anymore. Um, Definitely focus more on the role play these days. Hence the name of the channel.
There's an amazing assortment of games and like tabletop role playing games and they just really go from being almost completely like luck-based role games. You know what I mean? Just entirely about the numbers, to things that don't have any numbers at all, that are entirely word-based. And you can find whatever you're looking for, whatever mix there is that you need, you can find. It's fun to watch video games try to emulate the freedom that the tabletop role-playing games have, and they're getting better, obviously. But there's some funny interplay there.
Right, absolutely. And you can go ahead and I don't know, say you play whatever, an MMO, or uh, maybe old school like EverQuest, or whatever you're playing, and you make your character, you can design them, right? That's always been a thing. You have to like make your character try and look like yourself or whoever you want to be, but it's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
something about it. You just don't get that immersion because it's scripted. It's hard to put a label on, like, what is human. What is that, and put that into a computer.
So we talked a little last night. I teach a lot of high school kids, and they come to me as freshmen to the Tabletop Gamers Club, and some of them have some experience and some of them have none, and that's totally fine. But a lot of them, like, there's so many kids sometimes I can't run a game for everybody. So some of the kids will be off by themselves running a game, and they will be, what they think D&D is that everybody makes a character, and the dungeon master picks a monster, and they fight that monster, and then they get some XP, and then the dungeon master picks another monster, and they fight that monster and gets an XP. And it's fun for me to show them the other side, the idea of telling a story and building some suspense. My some of the greatest memories in my life are from the LARPs that I used to do. I used to run a 200-person LARP for the World of Darkness. So it was, mages, werewolves, modern day stuff. And if you went through a night without having to test at all, because we didn't have dice, we would do rock, paper, scissors, and you would sort of compare traits on your character sheet after that. But if you went without just role playing, without having to test at all, you felt like a champion. It was very cool.
Oh, absolutely. It's all I can't remember if you played in one of my Dread games or not, but do you know what Dread is?
No,
It's
I've
a
never heard of it.
horror based game. It's fairly popular, and it's essentially a Jenga tower is the action economy. There's no dice. There's you pull out the Jenga, and if you make the tower fall, you die. So it's kind of like that in the sense of
Sorry,
combine.
I lost sound on you. I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. So essentially, Dread is like a game of Jenga. That's the action economy, is the Jenga. If you make the tower fall by pulling one out, you die. And it's all based off story. There's no I am role playing as, say, like a fighter or whatever, and yeah, just I'm awesome all the time. It kind of based on you, and I think that it pulls it back into like the role playing into like the realism a little bit, right? Because if you roll a random number, it doesn't actually connect to you as the player.
Somebody in chat is talking about the Stormwind fallacy.
Yeah.
And I want to chat about that for a second. So, what they've written is the Stormwind fallacy is shorthand for how people draw a dichotomy between mechanically strong builds and good role playing. The fallacy is, if you are maximizing the mechanical power of your build, you clearly aren't investing in your character. Absolutely true in terms of the fallacy, but it misses some of the danger of, if your character is so technically perfect and so maximized in its ability that you don't balance with the other PCs, you can
Right.
wreck the game that way. Like, if the kids at school, like one of the kids, he's really good at it, but the other kids aren't looking to do that, and so I can't put them against a monster that he can't kill immediately, that doesn't kill them immediately, right?
Right. Right. Both sides of the equation, I think, have to be equal. And that's a good point, because I'll actually bring it back to another campaign I ran for like 6 months, and this was, yeah, not that long ago. This was maybe 4 or 5 months ago. It ended, and essentially what happened is, even though I had 6 players, it was extremely hard to challenge them, because they It's not even like they didn't build efficiently, they built very poorly, except for like one person who was super mechanically strong, he was a good role player and everything. But like you said, it brings up a good point of it's hard to challenge and it's hard to do things when not everyone's on the same page. I don't think necessarily one is better than the other because you can have everybody be super mechanically strong and good role players, and then as the DM, like you can challenge them in different ways. But sometimes if you don't either have good communication or if everyone's not on the same page, it's really difficult to make that happen.
I mean, you can literally run a role playing game where your PCs are demigods. I have it on my shelf right there. What is it, a Scion hero? Like, so go anywhere from ordinary humans to gods, and you can find a challenge for anybody, whether it be technical or role playing.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think I find it a little distasteful to like if you're rolling randomly and that's how everybody's going to do it, great. But if it's like a point buy system, and I see somebody, it's like, okay, I maxed out on like these things and then I'm minused all the way on some other things. It's not like you can't make it work, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's that like stigma against it. I don't know what it is, but it's not like I'd ever call somebody out and be like, no, you can't do that. But it may I hear what you guys are saying in the chat. Like it is kind of it's linking the mechanics to the story. Like what did the dice represent? What do those numbers represent? And I don't know. It's just some weird thing about me that I do when I do see that on paper or whatever. I'm like, like
It's the GM's job, and not an easy part of the GM's job to take, protect against that sort of thing, and to realize that whatever game you're playing, it's not going to be perfect, and it's the GM's job to moderate and be like, ooh, that's unbalanced and going to ruin everybody's fun. We're going to ruin
right,
half the people's fun, and you can make adjustments in all kinds of different directions, like make the weaker ones stronger, make the stronger ones more balanced.
right, absolutely. I think it all comes down to just some good making sure everybody's on the same page. Good communication between everybody, because it's super easy to make that work as long as you have the right people and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, but I would like to encourage anybody who hasn't done it to step back from the game. This is my personal preference, and it's just me, but some of the best experiences I've had in my life, some of the most memorable things I will take with me when I leave this earth, have been entirely story based. When you step away from the idea of winning and step towards the idea of telling a collaborative story, you're you're going to be rewarded, whether you die, heroically or tragically, as a part of it. It's definitely worth a try.
Right. And shads are, I agree too. So when the mechanics don't work, house rule it. So kind of circling back is, when is or when are the mechanics too much? And when do they hurt the story and immersion? And then flipping it around is when is there too much story and talking and not enough action?
And I think
When is there?
as a GM, you should talk very frankly with your players, not just before the game starts, but maybe after a few sessions, and be like, "Are we doing too much gaming? Are we doing too much role playing? What balance is good for you guys?" Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Now, Matt, do you generally go by we talked about a little bit yesterday, the rule of cool, or do you like to go by the book? Where does it depend?
Um, I have a taste for the cinematic. I like to do cinematic outtakes. I like to do. I really like your rule, and I've stolen it some. Where if you do the last point of damage, you get to narrate what happens. I think that's super cool, and my freshmen have dug right into that. So you've been feeding
Right.
back on my group. But
It's a pretty popular thing. Have you ever seen Critical Role or any of the big like That's the biggest one, but other big D&D streams or
It's funny. I've actually played in a game in that world. Actually, you know that, but I've never seen that. I haven't seen it
yeah,
yet.
Anthony. Yeah. Yep. Um, but that is kind of, I don't know. I feel like that's becoming the norm, right? So if we take a backseat, because I think we're both on the same page of, I think we hold the story to a higher level than the mechanics, and I think that's also kind of the trend. Um, but
The,
take,
yeah.
imagining we're on the opposing side here, when is it like what are the merits of running a just a purely mechanics based game, running it just by the book? Like when would you, when is it, when does it make it more satisfying or fulfilling?
I play those sorts of games. I like Magic the Gathering or dice games or board games. To me, the like I don't know, like why would I do that in my role playing game? I guess it's more of a I won't. So I used to play GURPS. GURPS was one of the first systems I played. The reason for that is my father was a Jehovah's Witness, and so he would have, if he saw any D&D books, he would have burned them. So I had to go and look and find role playing games that were not D&D. And one of the first I ran into, my mentor ran me GURPS games. GURPS games, for those of you who don't know, are just brutal in terms of the rules. Like they strike for this sense of realism that would blow your hair back like that, and it's just impossible to keep track of. And so maybe that's why when the storyteller system came along, specifically the werewolf book, like really affected me. The first one of the chapters about storytelling versus gaming, like it just freed me, just gave me this freedom from that. But that might just be me. The new D&D doesn't have that sort of thing. I really like 5th edition because it has a really nice balance of the two. But I've played in games with
Right.
rules that are insane.
Yeah, because if you back it up even to say if we're talking 3.5, um, Anthony and I, and I'm sure you played a lot of 3.5, right?
Technically,
And
my books were 3.0.
3.0, well, same. We'll call it a same pool. 3.0, 3.5. I know they're a little different, but
I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I'm just kidding. I avoided all that homebrew shit as like the
yeah.
plague.
No
Dealing with high
Pathfinder
school freshmen.
or
Yeah, no. And I'm sure it's great, but dealing with high school freshmen, that's a recipe for disaster.
right. And I think that's a good example of where the rules are too much, right? Nobody wants to look anything up because it's such a pain in the ass, you know. Maybe it's hard for comparison because I was playing it in my younger years, and all I wanted to do was be a barbarian and kill shit, so I didn't care. Um, but
Yeah,
like
with the
now,
Pathfinder, it's like I'm a half angel, barbarian, ninja. Like it got weird. It got weird for me.
yeah, like too much, right? I think perhaps that's a taste because I think I have more of what am I trying to say here? I favor kind of some realism in the game, not too much that it really bogs things down, but I do like to explore kind of the darker parts of the human experience, or some questions that can't be answered. And sometimes it's easier to do that in a game like Fifth Edition because it's just like you said, it's not just because it's more story based. It's because it's very easy to um, it's easy to modify. I found like from setting to setting, I just be like, yeah, we're gonna roll with this. Like for instance, one thing I started doing that Anthony started doing at the same time is just adding a point of exhaustion every time somebody goes unconscious. Now all of a sudden, it's not just here's the adventuring day where we kill 20 groups of enemies. It's all right, we gotta like wait a few days for that exhaustion to go away.
God, I'm so bad at that. Even like my barbarians who are like frenzy nuts or whatever. I'm supposed to give them exhaustion. I never think of that stuff. So
Right, right. So I guess just coming back to it. So is there a point when story is too much and there's not enough I want to say action. Of course, you can narrate, you can have a lot of RP, but it, like you're saying before, there has to be a good balance.
Yeah, and the players have to have a sense of both control and stability. They have to have the sense that if they want to make a decision, that it can affect the world, that they have some free will. But without the stability, they're going to feel like you're just fucking, that you're going to do whatever you want to them, you know. And I've had some GMs who there was this adversarial sort of feeling, like it's us against the GM, and the GM, you're just waiting for the GM to kill you, and that's no fun.
Yeah, I'm just gonna shout out to Pearly Whirly here in the chat. He plays in one of my games, and the one that we run on Thursdays, and I think he had some bad experiences with his last or maybe all of his DMs because it was
Oh
like
no.
we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, and actually it might come true this week. I don't know, but
My best friend runs the games for me, and for years he slaughtered us, and I finally got him away from that. Just
yeah.
through slow, I don't know, whining probably.
Yeah, Pearly Whirly is Jared, Rick.
You know what? What's important? It depends on, does the game master have a story to tell, and sometimes you don't, but people want to play anyway, and so you pick some monsters and you throw some stuff in the middle, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's the best you got. But if the game master has a story to tell and it's a good one, that can be gold. That can be truly rewarding, and you won't always find that, but when you do, you'll be happy you did.
Right. So, and you said if the GM has a story to tell. So, how much of the story is like the GM's job, and how much do you let go and let them do what they're going to do?
It would not be fun for me if I knew how things were going to turn out. That's not right. The medium. That's not what it's supposed to be. There is no way to predict what the players are going to do. There's no way to predict how they're going to, and there's no way to predict their ingenuity. I'm always shocked by, man, I didn't think of that. Of course that works. That's an awesome solution. And my story's a little bit wrecked, but I'll find a new story. And I get to learn the story as we go instead of knowing the story ahead of time. So what's the point of, I do read books more than once, but like you want to read it for the first time too. There's something special about that.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to that. So I very much agree. It's a collaborative story. So when I plan, say I'm like, okay, this is generally I build mine more sandboxy. I'll be like, here's what's going on in the world, and you can interface with it however you want to, or you can ignore it and go a different way. Doesn't mean those things are going to stop, but I like to make consequence-based games. Like for instance, in this campaign where Pearly Whirly keeps saying he's going to die, they found the leader of the Black Talons. It's like this mercenary group. If they hadn't found them, they would have just been doing what they were going to do. If they had decided, no, we want to go this way, we want to do this whole different thing, then that would have been the consequence, right? Is their stuff would have kept going on,
Yeah, and that intimidates some new GMs, but I think we'll get into that a little bit later.
Right.
The idea of improv, right?
Yeah. So, trying to think if there's anything else here for gaming versus roleplay.
I highly recommend anybody who's never played a World of Darkness game to go back to some of the earlier ones, the old World of Darkness, they call it, and just online find a PDF of one of their books and just read their take, like in the first couple of chapters, on what collaborative storytelling can be like. Because I have a special place in my heart for it. Like, they do a good job of giving you a sense of that. The mage one is good, and the werewolf one especially was decent, because the werewolf game was a power game. Like, it was a game about, like, those werewolves were friggin' like, they were monsters. Like, they were, like, you wouldn't want to come up against one, right, if you were something other than a werewolf. But the the cool storytelling that you could do in that setup is unmatched. It's very cool.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, and I think like taking it back, 'cause the first game that I had ever participated in was his He Ran a Champions game, and that was before when I was saying I was more of like a min maxer a little bit, and I think something about the way that game was structured, it was. I feel like that game. It's not that you can't RP, but of course, like you can do it in any system. But I feel like that system, perhaps being GURPS based, was more mechanical. You know,
Yeah, very much
it
so. Yeah.
was it was such a heavy focus on that it almost made it hard to role play. Like it was kind of like, yeah, we're cool. Like it was like we're superheroes, but come on, let's get to the next combat because I want to like blast them in the face.
I can't even imagine trying to play or run that game without that computer program that did all the math for us.
Hero creator.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
But that was one of my first games. That one I went to the mall and found it, like I think it was third edition of that, and it was the first one that wasn't D&D because I moved from my mother's house to my father's house, and I couldn't bring the D&D books with me because I knew he would have thrown them out. So like that was the first one I found I could run with all those religious nut friends of mine. But so that was a labor of love. Like I had to read the book because I had no other options.
Yeah, I bought Anthony. I don't know if this sparked. I think this sparked your interest in everything. So real quick, we were talking about yesterday, Matt and I. He's building what he hopes to be his new magnum opus. The other one was Champions, but based on Mage the Ascension. I don't know what edition, if there's different editions. I've personally never played it, but
Crap, let me look at my wiki real quick. I think it's second edition. 99% sure.
but I'm kind of looking forward to playing in that. I want to play in that. But
I'm going to run it a bunch of times. You wouldn't believe the hundreds of hours of work I have put into this story and the details. And so I'm going to run it a bunch of times just so I don't waste all that time. You know what I mean?
right.
So I'm going to do some with total strangers, I think, on Roll20. I'm going to do so with the kids at school. I'm going to do so with you guys. I'm going to do so with some of my old LARPing buddies if they're willing to come back.
So what are the merits of that system? Like, what makes it such a good medium for storytelling, as opposed to just
it
that
is second
game?
edition, by the way. The rules are super simple, and there are plenty of systems where the rules are super simple. But it's not quite ready yet. I would run it right now. Someone in chat said, but soon. It's actually the game date starts because of an astronomical thing in like March 20th of 2019. So hopefully I'll run it before then. Got me off track here. The mage stuff, you're basically, you start off as normal human beings, but in the end you could become gods by the time you get to the higher levels. There are these 9 spheres that the magic run with, and you have certain levels of power with them, but you don't have spells. You create your own spells by mixing the spheres. Like you might mix,
yeah.
You might mix time and life to make something grow old really fast, or you might mix life or entropy and matter to make like a gold bar decay.
That kind of reminds me of what are they? The 5 humors.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of ye old why can't I think of it? Like alchemy stuff,
Yep. Here are the 9 spheres: correspondence, which is space and spatial directions; entropy, forces, fire, kinetic energy, cold; life, mind, matter; prime, which is sort of the fuel, like the magical quintessence underneath everything, like fueling the magic; spirit, so you can talk to ghosts and things in the Umbra; and time.
Right. So
Yeah. The players can
So
still do stuff. There's still rules if I want to shoot you. There's still rules if you want to try to like use a skill. But it's just not that complicated. The magic system is a little bit more complicated, but the freedom with which you can do stuff is more than champions level, without all the math of the champions stuff.
right. So does it behoove you as a player? Like, do you need to be tactical in that game, or is it a game that you can tell a good story without needing to be tactical?
With me as a GM, you never need to be tactical. You know that. I'm not fond
Yeah.
of killing off my players unless they do something genuinely stupid.
That is like the exact opposite of me. Just as
I know.
Pearly Whirly.
I know. That's okay though. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want to try both. That's fine.
yeah. So you said something interesting yesterday when we were coming up with the topics. It was the difference, like when you take a step back, the difference between gaming and role playing. That gaming, the purpose of gaming is to win, versus I think what I had mentioned, role playing is about exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the players, yeah, like the GM has this world, and the players want to know how it functions and what it's about, what story he's trying to tell. The winning that sort of automatically sets up the adversarial thing with the GM, right? And that's okay. You like two people playing chess. There's something adversarial going on, but it's a very different feel.
Gotta be eaten. Pearly Whirly always eats. I always have to get on him. It's like chewing gum. He's like,
What I do? Where
I
am I?
think I think there is something missing in that. Gaming isn't just to win in the context of RPG. That is a problem many struggle with when moving to it. Um, do you think perhaps
Let's get
chess?
Buddhist. You gotta find the middle way, right?
Yeah,
You have to
yeah.
find the balance.
You know, when I said exploration, I didn't just mean like a physical. I meant like it. You actually step in, but perhaps into the shoes of like somebody else or a different mindset or blah blah blah, glorified version of yourself, whatever it is. But perhaps it's an emergent thing, and maybe it's just me. I personally feel like if I were even to play a game like Baldur's Gate or um, Pillars of Eternity or anything like that, or if you play kind of more like the single player RPGs, I can't I can't put myself in there, and perhaps that's just me. Um, but it's not, to me. It doesn't hold a candle to the sort of role playing you can do right at the table, like because you're actually with other people. You're not with a scripted world. Um, so yeah, it's not that it's not fun, for me anyway, to have the RPG, feel like you're like, oh, I'm doing this cool adventure, whatever it is. But I find myself more than not just, hit mashing X or A or whatever it is to like, I'm gonna skip all the chat. I just want to kill the thing. And even as somebody that's super story focused in all my games, I can never plug myself in.
Yeah, there's a synergy and like what's the German word Gestalt. When you put a bunch of minds together, there's something that is kind of social, which we didn't really think about the other day, but is like you feed off of each other, both the energy and the ideas.
Right. I think some of it too is it's very easy to plug yourself in, to have that suspension of disbelief, and to be like, okay, I'm a kid, here's my imagination, when you don't know what's going to happen. You don't truly know what's going to happen. So if you have a game, you save the game, right? You have your guy, or you have your girl, or you have your whatever person, or your party, whatever it is in the game. You can save it. You can go and be like, oh, I failed at the boss. I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna, all right, before before that happened, I'm going to try again. Oh, I'm going to build myself up. There's no true consequence unless you're just like, okay, I'm going to play a hardcore game, or you have some sort of moral compass that you're like, no, if I fail, I have to restart. You know what I mean?
It's not the
But
same thrill.
right,
Yeah.
you truly do not know what's going to happen. In a video game, you know what's going to happen. If you win, if you beat the thing, and then beat the next thing, and then you beat the next thing, eventually you're going to win the game. And yeah, there's choices matter games, but in a tabletop setting, you're never going to know what's going to happen, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be done different ways. It doesn't, like my Champions game, it was pretty hard to die. You had characters with like resurrection powers and stuff, but you could still lose. The bad guys could still whoop you, and they could still, like, their plan could come to fruition and yours get crushed, So there's different ways to do that. But, obviously D&D is about survival.
Right. And even like what Shadzar is saying, like video games and even CRPGs are bound by the limits of the code. Tabletop RPG is only bound by your own imagination, because even though you have this framework, you have this like, here's the rules of mage or whatever. If you're the kind of GM that's story based, or if you play by a rule of cool or the yes and or whatever, you can just be like, yeah, I don't give a crap what it says. If you fall 9 feet, this is what's going to happen.
You have to reward that. Like, otherwise they might as well be playing a video game. If they can't pick up a chair and smash the dude over the head, like, you can't do that in a video game because the programmers didn't think of it. If you don't reward that creative thinking, then they'll stop doing it. You have to.
Right. So you can be in there, and you can bend the framework to your will, and you can do it just on a whim. Like, you know what, I don't like the fact that if you roll this dice and you have the chance of completely like dying, it doesn't make any sense to me. No, we're not going to do that this time, or ever, or whatever it is. Yeah, because you completely have the freedom. There are guidelines. There's not really rules per se.
Yeah, I find if you're doing too much story, you find yourself going, no story would end that way. But there do have to be consequences for people doing stuff that would reasonably get them killed.
So if you could sum it up in one word, what is the difference between gaming and role playing? It would be consequences.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. So, no, go ahead. It sounded like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I guess the difference also is in collaboration. Is it a collaboration or competition? And I think that's actually, God, I don't even want to get into it. That's the entire difference between like right wing, left wing in our political system. Do you want our society to be a collaboration, or do you want it to be a competition? And maybe both sides have their merit. Maybe there's a middle way there too. But let's not go down that path.
Right. Well, I'll just say as a quick note though, there's co-op games, right? That's collaborative. There are also, I've actually run a one shot. You've been in it, Pirates versus Nobles, right? So
Yep.
And that adversarial. There are dungeon masters and groups that they love that. They like to have the GM versus the players. It's not how I really play, but
that's an interesting example, because our group was very much into having a story, and we had fun and we had laughs, and the other group was very much into kicking our asses, and they did, but I think we had more fun. So
oh, absolutely. And I like how you almost made it back to the ship, and you got caught like right at the end of the last roll. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, but oh man, that's good. All right. So
that's the reason I don't allow rangers in my campaigns anymore.
They're pretty broken.
I'm just kidding.
They can be. I think there are some mechanically strong things. I don't think any system can truly escape that. Like, there are like, here are the prime picks. Not necessarily like here is the best, but here are like the top ones.
Yeah.
All right.
But for doing what? For doing damage? Nah. Who cares about that? I want to be the wizard. I want to learn new things, and make new spells.
Right.
Be the guy who finds out what the item is. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. So, let's go. Is anybody interested? Anybody want to jump in the voice? Anybody have their 2 cents before we move on to the next topic here? I'll give like a 20 or 30-second window or something. Maybe like 40, because I think this lags by 20 seconds.
I'll sing in the meantime. Just kidding. It's terrible idea.
Nope, I'm broke. Broke. Yeah, absolutely. They totally can be. It really depends. It depends on the kind of game. Like, I run games that can be punishing survival-wise. So Rangers, they like have a purpose, in my games. Doom, 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 doom. Okay.
Yeah, that dude was one-shotting us. So that was a little like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
Guess the game's over.
Right. Because I think it was at that level range. Once you get past it, it scales off a little bit, but, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on here. I'm gonna
Next.
I don't have any fancy animations, so I have to change the text so you can see what the topic is because I am a cool guy. I'm figuring. I didn't know how to do any of this. I built all this stuff like in the last 3 days, and I haven't like slept in like 2.5 days. So that's cool.
I'm just sitting here. The back of my brain is going roofie, oh, roofie, oh. Bangarang, man.
All right. Boom. So, yeah, what is the GM's job?
So, leading up to the talk about prep versus improv, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, your main job is to know at some underlying level how the world that the characters are in functions. You know what I mean? You don't need to know any of the details about who lives where or who, God, the game I'm working on, I'm like putting like each room. I know exactly what's in that room because I'm going way overboard with the prep.
You're like AD&D when you look at the book and it's like, this guy, Town Villager 1, has 28 copper pieces in his pocket.
Right. You don't need to do that. You can do that for fun, and I'm doing that for fun, and it has a very specific purpose in the first adventure. But you need to know how the world functions. How does I don't know where my brain is going with that, but like where are the bad guys, where are the good guys, what's happening on the macroscopic level, I guess is what I'm looking for.
Which is kind of what I was going to say. On the higher, you plan on the higher level and you leave the meticulous details to be flexible. But I think just taking go ahead.
There's also a meta thing that we should talk about. I'm going to leave a note for myself. We'll talk about it afterwards, but go ahead.
I was just going to take a step back because I think even before you bring in the story, before you bring anything else into it, the rules don't exist. The world doesn't exist. It's just you and friends. I think first and foremost, it's being a catalyst not just in the game, but in the real world between everybody, right? It's about having good communication, which we kind of touched on before, and saying, what kind of game are we going to play? What things make you comfortable? What things make you uncomfortable? What are you okay with? What are you not okay with? And I think you have to start with a strong foundation, and I think that suits really well, right? Because you are, go ahead. You can link whatever you want, Shadzar. You get that totally because you're a teacher, but and you're also a GM. But it's like herding sheep, and it's a skill on its own. I'm a dad, right? I have 3 kids, so like that also comes easily to me now. But it's like a skill that you have to kind of flex.
I used to pawn that off too, because of the hardest part of the job for me was just getting, as an adult, getting the other adults together. I have it easy now with the school because the kids are sort of trapped there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they want to be there, and I don't have to think much about that. And I know what's appropriate for them and what's not, so we don't go too far anyway. But like as an adult, it's like, all right, if you want me to DM a game, you find the people, you get them there, and I'll take care of the rest. But that's tough, just getting people together.
Right. And even when you do get people together, it's not always... It's not... What am I trying to... Give me 1 second to articulate what I'm trying to say. All right. Whether a group succeeds or fails, it is not... I don't feel like that is necessarily the GM's job. But I think the GM's job is to be outspoken, because it doesn't matter. You could be the best GM in the world, right? Or one of, what have you. But I think all the pieces need to fit well together. And the GM's job, I think, is pointing out what pieces don't fit, or trying to make the pieces fit. Whether that's in the game or whether that's interpersonal, because some player types rub other player types the wrong way, or sometimes it's resisting that urge to be like, ooh, I have the really good role player, we're gonna favor that person, right, and give them the stuff and do this. It's about really making sure that there is no friction between all those pieces. And that's why I always run a session 0. I don't know. Have you ever run a session 0? Like a formal session 0?
I've certainly just had let's make character sessions. That might not be what you mean, though.
It's kind of like that, but it's also the story too. So right, I think anybody who's a writer, anybody who's a game master, anybody who's creative in that sense, they have all these ideas flowing, and they're like, yeah, we could string along. You could make a story, you could do this and that. But I think there's a balance between what kind of game do you want to run as a GM, and then what kind of game do the players actually want to play. And you have to talk about that, I think, because some players might be like, I want to be a paladin, but that I'd really like if there are undead in the story. If they featured, so that way I can use my cool abilities and do all this cool stuff. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be like, I really don't want to touch on any, I don't know, like, I hope your game doesn't feature any racism because I'm just uncomfortable with that, or something. You know what I mean? It really kind of depends on what sort of games you run anyway, but having that line of communication open and being like, this makes me comfortable, uncomfortable, but then also just like, this is what I want to play, and this is what I don't want to play. And I don't think it's ever perfect. You're going to be like, all the players are like, this is what we want to do all the time, right? I think some of the...
I think I totally get what you're saying, and I think I have neglected that and could do better. I think I tend to come at that stuff a little too late after we've been playing for a while, and by then it's limited to what can be fixed and what can't be. So I think I could learn from you on that.
Right. I think it's super healthy, and it always ends up being like an entire, like, it'll be like 4 hours, and then people will be like still making their characters after, because it's like part 1 is the story. What kind of thing do we want to make? Let's talk about character ideas, but then like, here are themes that we want and don't want. Just make sure everyone's on the same page. And then step 2 is like, okay, now we're making our characters. And again, you don't always want to commit. I think it's hard. I have games that are very roleplay heavy, and I feel like it's hard to do that if you have like one guy that's like, yeah, I'm a barbarian, I'm gonna kick down the door, and I'm gonna like chew off a deer's head like with my teeth. Yeah, I did that. That was me in my younger days, Anthony. And like younger me in a game of mine now, I'd be like, no way, or like, let's find all players that are like chaotic, neutral, crazy, or whatever. Like, again, I just think all the puzzle pieces have to fit together, and that's kind of where the true, in my opinion, the true job of the GM is communication. I think if I had to sum it up in one word, it would be communication.
I've sort of bribed my kids, this group. I have 6 kids, and sort of half and half role players and gamers, and I bribed one of the kids. He just can't stop talking. He's just so excited to be playing, and man, I totally get that, and I'm glad he's there. But he just has to be constantly doing something, even like to the point where nobody else gets a turn. And so we had this fun discussion. I stole it from the Mage book, actually, because that's what I've been reading recently, about the idea of a spotlight, that each player needs some time in the spotlight. And I don't even give them XP. I just level them when I think it's time to level them. So I told them, like I gave them the sense that I secretly keep track of XP or something, right? I told them that I would reward them as a group in terms of XP if they did a better job of giving the limelight to the people who don't often have as much to say. And of course, the first time I did that, the guy who never talks, like everybody's like, all right, we'll give him a chance to do something. The first thing he did was he was going to set off this trap and, get brutally destroyed. And so I ended up, it just wasn't there anymore. Not that they knew, but yeah.
Well, I'm actually totally with you. So I do, it's kind of a mix. It's pretty much I level them whenever I feel like it, but it's actually, I found this works really well if you end up running 5th edition. I don't know about every edition, but number of sessions I feel works really well, because then the players don't feel like they're being pressured. Like if we kill the guy, we get the XP. Like it makes them, I think it diverts them from being like, oh, we want to be murder hobos because like that villager's worth 10 XP, so we're just gonna slaughter him, and take his 28 copper that's in his pocket. But yeah, pretty much whenever I feel like it. But yes, on the spotlight, I think having timing, and I do try and do that. So when I make my stories, I'm trying to weave everybody's like, here's my backstory, here's my this and that, and I'm starting to seed stuff. I'll usually go one player at a time, and I'll start seeding them in. So they feel like this tiny portion of the arc, like I'm special, and maybe that returns, or maybe it ends up being a longer portion of the arc or story. But for instance, again, Pearly Whirly, Jared, he keeps saying, I actually have it right here. He keeps seeing this black obsidian stone in visions, and he's like, "What the fuck is that? Oh my god!" So you know what I mean. But it makes him feel special, right? And uh, there's another thing that Rick Black Rufio got, and I'm not going to say anything because only he knows what it is unless he told people. So, it's about like doing those things sometimes on the down low, or sometimes they don't realize how special they are, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh wow, this is the thing, you know.
And D&D caters to that nicely because of the whole idea of how free you can be with the magic items and how cool and unique and interesting they can be. So especially for the younger kids I run with, I definitely make sure everybody gets not necessarily their fair share of treasure, but something cool in their turn.
Right. What I like to do personally, I like to give them. I think this helps with role playing and stuff. Don't just give them the magic sword +2 or whatever it is. I like to give them a part of it, and then they have to get the whole. I find that like it always is successful. I'll be like, they find an empty sheath, and they're like, "What?" It's like a jeweled sheath, or it's something cool, and they find out it's like sentient, or and somehow it's like pulling them towards the direction of the blade or the pieces of the blade or whatever. So by the time they hit a certain level, or it directs them to be like, "No, I want to do this thing." It makes them feel special, and then at the end they're like, "Now I have the sword +2." They feel like they earned it. They feel like they didn't just find it. They feel like they earned it.
And when they earn it, they feel like they own it. I do the same thing with levels. Like I don't want to start my game at level 5. I want you to start at level 1. So when you get to level 5, you feel like you own that shit.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. That's why actually in this I keep going back to this campaign because that's the one that I'm running right now. But they started at 3rd level, and I was like, like part of me was like, but it's worked out. It's been a blast, but I do like it's that that difference, that clash between like we were peons and now we're like level 5. Now we're not superheroes or anything, but we can hold our own. We're getting pretty specialized, pretty powerful here, and we're ready to go on to bigger, better things.
Yeah, easier for me with the captive audience when you have a older group, unless you've got somebody group who can play very regularly. Sometimes you just end up playing through levels 1 through 3 forever, and you'll bore yourself as a GM.
Yeah, and that is tough. So kind of like I'm just gonna keep trying to redirect it. So what's the GM's job is, so timing, and that can be long term or short term. If you have a group of players that meet once a month and they're not committed to play for 10 years, then you have to put more into each session. You have to be faster. But where I have a group that runs every week, I'm not afraid to be like, you'll find out next week, because I feel like the longer it takes to get there's a balance between like, oh, like this is dragging on, and like that feeling of we earned it.
Yeah. What else is the GM's job? There are some things that aren't the GM's job, but if the GM takes it up as a job, can be very valuable. Like the idea of theme and mood, right? But to try to keep into the next topic too much, like what maybe I'll just do it as a teaser for the next topic. There are things as a GM that you can teach your players, and not in a dickish way, like I know more than you do, I'm going to teach you something, but I'm going to show you something, and you're going to learn in a Socratic way, like Socrates would ask questions and pretend not to know the answer in order to get them to think for themselves. And as a teacher who is also a game master, that's huge for me. I want to put you in a situation that is morally ambiguous, so that I think you have to think, how do I decide what is right? How do I decide what the thing to do is? And in the process of trying to figure that out together as a group or individually, or by my own, like my interaction with the NPCs, even, like I'm going to get with you, we're going to do some philosophy together. So having an uber plot that can go either way, that is morally ambiguous, to test with them, are we the good guys, or are we the bad guys, or are the bad guys right, and how do we decide those things?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Like you said, I'm just gonna wait, because that's kind of our, that's Anthony.
Right on.
I'm gonna take a step back from that, just so we don't get too much in the next topic here. But so circling back, we talked about it, we touched on it. So prep versus improv. I know me personally, I don't plan all the meticulous details. I know the pieces, I know the movers and shakers, I know how the pieces are interacting on a higher level. For instance, in the setting I'm doing now, there's like 6 warring baronies, there's like a tense political climate, and it's kind of like, on a war board in like Skyrim or whatever, with all the flags. In my mind, I'm just like, yeah, this piece is going there, that piece is going here, this piece is going there. And then I wait for and then the party does something. And I'm like, okay, now this is, because the party did that, these are how the pieces are moving. But if they're like, I steal stuff from this guy's pocket, that's random generator or whatever, I'm going to be like, oh, I randomly generate those 28 copper pieces. I'm not going to, waste my time saying that, writing it down somewhere that he has them.
Early in the campaign, I think you should prep a lot more than you're going to later. Like, you're going to set this scene, but you don't want to know even what the players are going to do with that. So you don't want to go too far. You're just wasting your time, because they might go to the other side of the planet for all you know. But at the beginning, if there's too much detail, they're going to get more and more immersed, and then their brain will start to pick up the slack and fill in the details on its own. Once you get them.
You cut out for a second.
Sorry.
So, and I agree that there should be some more thought when you first run a game. But is that to say that if you don't do a lot of prep, that you can't have a successful game?
No, God, no. Again, depending on the players, I run a game with some guys that or they wanted to be Sabat, which is the evil vampires. And these are kids who are older kids, and one of them even graduated and is coming back. And they come in Tuesdays, and I told them in advance, I have no time to prep for this, so we're gonna wing it every time. But they're the kind of players. We'll do all kinds of cool role playing anyway with each other. They'll go find NPCs. I will wing it like mad, and then we'll have some fights. Like in that World of Darkness system, I can literally just pick between 3 and 5 dice for the bad guys and whatever they're trying to do, and it literally has no effect on the game. The players know their characters and what they can do, and I can really easily, just by picking the right number between 1 and 10 to make the situation scary or not.
Right.
So there's no gaming involved there, because they know I am not there. In that particular case, I am not there. They're just having a blast. So.
1 second. I'm just going to check my stuff here. You're cutting out a little bit. I don't know if it's you or if it's me. I'm going to have to go like kick somebody. Which, by the way, I didn't set it up today, but also my internet's changing, which will be awesome. Blah, blah, blah. Can I hear myself? Okay. For a second, I could hear my own voice, but then it stopped.
Yeah, the people in the chat asking about Midnight Dawning. That game is basically my 30s I spent telling that story, and when I die, that will be one of the things I will take as an accomplishment that I take with me. Like, that story changed my outlook, changed my world, and I had the most effect on young people and their own ability to tell right from wrong. I tried running it again with the kids, but something about the kids has changed. The superhero genre has been totally saturated, so that they can't really be heroic. There's too many Marvel movies or something. I'm not sure, but I've tried it a couple of times and it just hasn't worked. But you guys, being from that generation where it worked, I could do it again, but I'd have to put some thought into it, obviously.
Yeah, we should definitely do that again. I do want to touch before we go on to the next thing here. I feel like now, more so than ever, because I'm running in Roll20. I'm not really doing as many offline things as I was for a little bit there, and I find like it's infinitely easier for me to do improv, because I can set up something in a virtual tabletop. I can have all those rollable tables that are sweet in all the source books that you would never realistically use, because you'd have to know all the pages and roll all the dice. They're at my fingertips. I have them in tables. I have them all set up in macros. It's like boom, boom, boom. Like, it's, to me, it makes it, if say there's a magic needle and somewhere in the middle is, one side's improv, one side is prep. I feel like the more prep I do a lot of prep to improv these days. So like my session is like, I know what's going on the higher level. I know those pieces, but then I'm just like, well, here's all my generators. Here's all my this and that is just like at my fingertips.
I like that about Roll20s. You can,
yeah,
once it's ready. You can run it for 3 different groups.
Right. So for me, I've been running in the setting that I'm doing, and I just put a new section every time I run a game. So eventually it'd be like, wow, how'd you come up with all this stuff? And it's like, I did, but it was like slowly over time. So I like, if I were trying to say like, here's somebody who wants to get into the trade, I would say not to worry as much about the prep, because it's very easy to over prep. And what happens, I think, is, and this happened to me, is even if it was like a one shot or something, I would do like so much effort, and I'd like draw all the maps, and I do this and that, and I would think about all this stuff that either the players never touched, or it's like it was stressing me out. And yeah, it was a successful game, but I'm like, my heart's pounding. I'm like, whoa. And I don't think it needs to be that, because I think players can have a real good time just being like, here's a very simple linear story. And I'm not saying it depends on the group, but like, people are gonna have fun if you run the game, and even if it's a long-term game, I don't think the amount that you prep is an indicator of how good the game is going to be.
Yeah, I bought a PS4 recently, and I've been playing that Spider-Man game, and I feel so much pressure to do the story. Like I just want to explore the world. I literally, when I talk to my players, I give them occasionally the choice. I'll be like, right now at this point, there is Uber plot, but it can wait. If you guys want to accomplish something sort of open world, free to do that. When you are done and are feeling bored, let me know. Just give me the word, and I will put the Uber plot back in line. You know what I mean? And I found that.
Right. And I kind of, like I said before, I've run a lot of sandboxy stuff, so I totally feel that. um, where pretty much the vast majority of it is generally I put players in a spot and be like, this ties to the story here, but they could like run away and be like, okay, we're not even going to touch that story. We're going to go to this. Um, I usually plan like 3 steps ahead. I try not to, like major steps, right, on a higher level. Um,
Yeah. If you as a GM though make your stuff not quite so, I think I lost you.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I gotta stop looking at the picture with the problem. If you as a GM make your stuff not so time sensitive, you'll have a little bit of more flexibility, and you won't lose some of your story while
Right.
they're off doing something else.
Right. At the same time, there are definitely times where I'm like, this piece might take a little bit to move over to, you know what I mean? So they do have some of it is time sensitive, but not all of it is, right? Sometimes I'll be like, okay, well here's like a, I don't know, a big spider boss in this forest, and it's always going to be here until somebody comes, you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
or here's the evil goblin tribe or whatever, and it's always going to be there ruining everybody's life until somebody takes care of it,
yeah.
so I do sprinkle those in there. They're like, this is how this works here, until somebody stops it. But
You also got to be
like,
careful that your whole group is having fun with that, and there aren't like 2 people waiting for the Uber plot while the other 2 are fucking around burning villages or something.
right, which again I think comes back to the good communication, right? But like being a catalyst between not just the world, the game, and the characters, but like the interpret, like in the real life, everybody. Um, so coming from somebody who used to over prep and used to like stress out about it, and now I'd say a lot of it is improv. Um, just brings up the question, you know, how have you improved and changed over the years? Like from, your first game to now, like what are some things that you do differently? And um,
Oh wow!
that'll kind of roll into the next topic.
My brother, when I was in the ninth grade, woke me up and said, "Let's skip school and play D&D." And I said, "What's that?" And he ran the game, and I think that was the last time he ran the game, because from then I got the book and I read it and I ran the game. So I don't know. It was so long ago. I didn't know what I was doing, and then I played in a lot of games with other friends, and I've certainly, I maybe I don't think about it consciously enough. I think I've just gotten better because of so much time and through sort of hard knocks. But I've become good at um, dealing with the high school kids and the groups that are sort of constantly changing. Um, I've become
Right.
good at being a little bit epic because I have them for a longer period of time. I can have them for a couple of years, 2 days a week if I want. So I
Right.
can stretch that story out um, into something longer. Um, I
Yeah.
I'm a little bit insane. I my like that champion stuff. I got into this multiverse sort of thing that was messing with my head and how the universe functioned, and just got very philosophical with some Nietzsche stuff and some right and wrong. And for me, this is the purpose of my existence. I don't game because I teach. I teach because I game, and
Right.
that is how I understand my world, is through running games and playing in games. And all I care about is the exercise for my imagination, and I probably do it not as thoughtfully as maybe I could. But I think the experience holds me up a little.
Absolutely, and it transitions your tabletop experience to here is a game, and now here's something you're learning from a game. It's not just a game anymore. It's you're actually, you know, affecting either you're changing through these experiences, but everybody else is changing too, right? You're learning, other people are learning, and it for you it must be crazy too because you're running these games for high schoolers, right? So you see that change like compounded into like however long you have them, whether it's a full 4 years or if it's 2 or 1 or what have you. So like that, you must really see the difference of like, wow, like this perhaps I think we were talking about yesterday. An example is perhaps there's somebody who's introverted and they take the chance to like, I'm going to be a bard. I'm going to be a face character, whether that's a bard or I'm trying to think it's a face in Shadowrun or whatever it is for the system. And at the beginning they might just be like, yeah, I talked to the guy. They might not get into it, but it gives them a space to explore some things about themselves and actually learn some skills. Is it that you were born, uh, introverted and you can never, socialize with another human being? Some it kind of begs the nature versus nurture kind of thing, but I think having a space where you can explore those things is very helpful for a lot of people, myself included.
Yeah, and those younger kids have amazing enthusiasm for, because they did, like, these kids, some of these kids don't know that there can be a story in D&D. One of the kids, we were just talking, he's one of my quieter ones, and we were just talking about Star Wars for some reason. Like, yeah, I should run a Star Wars game at some point. And it, like, a light went on above his head, almost literally, like, oh my god, there are Star Wars games that are like D&D? And he was like, yeah, please, we have to do that. And so that enthusiasm really fuels me, because I am it's a gift to be able to give to some of these kids and to share with them the sort of joy that I got. But when you're new at it, it's a little bit extra. I still get that joy.
Right. Yeah, now, and you get some kind of other weird skills too, like, I can do silly voices and, this and that. And is lame as I think it is sometimes. Like it's awesome. Like people eat it up. They love it. I do shit at work all the time. Like I'll answer the phone and I'll use a different voice. And it affects your life in so many little ways that you wouldn't expect, you know.
Yeah, you get confidence, to speak to other people and in front of
Right.
other people. As a GM, you get an extra dose of that.
Oh yeah. I think definitely more concentrated for a GM, but just playing as a player, like I don't think it matters. I think learning communication skills, which is really what tabletop role playing is all about, is super healthy for everybody. I think everybody can benefit and continue to learn.
So we're on, what do tabletop role playing games teach us?
Yes. Yeah.
I have a little speech.
Okay.
But this is on my mind, obviously, as a teacher who loves gaming. So if you think about what makes human beings different brain wise, like we have access to the present through our senses, right? We have access to the past through our memories, but our access to our imagination. And I've met plenty of people, just ordinary citizens of the world, who are students and just trying to get by. They're kind of asleep, though. They either don't like their imagination, or they don't trust it, or they keep it in check. They don't let it go anywhere weird or strange. Obviously I'm known for you TA kids as the teacher who hangs out with the weird kids, right? Because I run the anime club and the tabletop gamers club. But there's something about that that's important. The ability to imagine scenarios and things that aren't real, and how things work, and what what the future is going to be based on what you perceive now and what you remember about how things work is super powerful. The people who build new things and change the world are people that who have imagination and can use their imagination. And the phrase I like to use is they learn to think around corners. It doesn't matter what your education is. If you have learned to think around corners, you could be trained at any job and get good at any job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that exercise is the most important thing that my kids get out of it.
And so you teach high school. I have 3 toddlers, and you know, I
You got your own gaming
yeah,
crew in a couple of years.
so yeah, exactly. And you know, I see a lot of that, right? In my kids, right? They're that age where their imagination just runs rampant, and they tell me all these random things and like, Dad, I'm a turtle, and like, you're my like turtle cat dad, like, they just say all these random weird things, and they want to play, and they want to play pretend and all that stuff. And I'm just like, oh, this is where it starts, and somewhere in the middle it gets lost. It's just the world saying, maybe it's the world saying no, maybe it's, they can't play turtles and cat turtle dads as often as they'd like to, and that skill becomes rusty. But I think when you play a tabletop role playing game, it kind of takes that genie in the bottle. It just kind of like and it brings it back out. Uh,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
flexing.
for me, it started long before D&D. I was on the playground. Me and my friends were watching Star Wars movies when they first came out, like Empire Strikes Back, and so we would play lightsabers with each other. There weren't any rules, but we had to make up some pseudo rules. It's that same thing.
Right. Oh yeah, it's I remember many a time with Anthony and going down his street, and we were playing all with all the kids on the block, and we'd like fashion sticks into swords and like whatever. You know what I mean? We're just kids where we have good imagination, we're hanging out. So it's one of those things where I didn't play I knew what they were, but I didn't really play a lot of tabletop games for a long time. And then they weren't what I thought they'd be either. So when I started playing them, I'm like, wow, okay, so this is a thing, and it kind of reignited that spark. And I think I think that is like you said, it's very valuable. I don't think you can put a price tag on it. And I feel like every time I play, every time I run a game, every time I play in a game, every time I exercise, every time I add more fuel to that spark, it just burns brighter, you know?
So, yeah. I've thought of something else that isn't quite what role-playing games teach us, but what we can get from them.
Right.
And it's this. It's going to get a little morbid here, so hang in there. When we die, either we get to take our memories with us or we don't. It's a tautology, right? So assuming that we don't get to take, well, let's say we don't get to take our memories with us, then it doesn't much matter what our lives are like. We don't get to take anything with us. But if we do get to take our memories with us, if all of those memories are the same thing, waking up, drinking coffee, driving to work, you know what I mean? If it's nothing but the same stuff over and over again, they really aren't new memories. They're just recycled. They're just the same. And the content that you take with you, the hard drive space that is needed to store your memories is tiny. Role-playing games give us experiences that are new every time, that can't be repetitive, really, that they're not just as real, but they can be just even more exciting than the ordinary mundane stuff. And that's part of us. We are a collection of experiences. We are an ordered collection of experiences, whether those be sensory experiences, memory, or imagination experiences. Those become us. And people who have more experiences of this type have more that make them up. End of speech.
No, and I agree. It coming back to the we'll say the face character. I play a face character. I've played, many characters, and um, I find myself taking on certain traits, and that somewhere along the line it all amalgamates into this weird form that is me. Uh, this weird thing that this other character did, or here's how like this brick character stood up to the big bad evil guy, or the bully, or whatever it was, and before you know it, like I feel like I'm continually taking on some of these traits and building myself up, you know. And like you
Mhm.
said, there's memories, but there's also it's not just when we die, what can we remember, but like throughout every day, right? I think like we're taking that and we're building ourselves up, you know.
Yeah, the ethics thing is probably the most interesting and important thing. Like my kids come to me, the young ones, and for the very first games, they usually want to do something kind of evil, not because they're evil at heart, but because they've never had that freedom before, and they want to look at it. And I'm always careful to make sure that there are some repercussions for whatever their evil actions are. You know, that they put that into their ideals, but also just the learning the difference between right and wrong is something you get to take with you, because
Right.
you're not just it's not just about the specific situation, it's about the algorithm that your brain uses to try to decide which of these three choices is the right one, or whether it be because of consequences or whether it be because of something more innate, like your conscience.
Right. Right.
I guess that's the end of that train of thought.
No, I like the sound of that, and just give me a second to collect my thoughts here. But and it going back to what you were talking about before, Socrates or any of the good ye old philosophers, right? And begging
Mhm.
people to ask questions, to learn for themselves, to think about thinking, right? And
Yeah, metacognition, my
that's
friend.
that is in essence, how we're improving. Like, what are we gaining from it? We're gaining that ability where it's another form, or it's another root on the same tree, if you will, right? And that teaches us not only to problem solve, but it begs us to answer the questions like what is evil, what is good, um, is there one or the other, or are we all just something in between? And I love exploring that sort of stuff in my games, and no, I just think there's a lot of valuable lessons that can be learned even though there's no answer, or there's
Yeah,
many answers, there's infinite
yeah.
answers, whichever you
It used
choose.
to be philosophy was the way Socrates did it, was interactive, but really since then it's always been somebody wrote a book. The last 100 years, all the best philosophy has been through fiction, either movies or fiction books. Or Trey Parker with South Park or something like that. But
Right,
this allows us to be interactive again and take the best part of both worlds, to be interactive with each other and to have story, to
right.
use allegory to teach us about what's real, what's right, what makes sense. Um, what else is there? What's aesthetically pleasing, right?
Oh yeah. And I just lost what I was gonna say here, but it people learn best by not digesting the information. They learn best by not being told but being shown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think that's why tabletop role playing games, it's such a good medium, because you're not just telling, right? You might be like, yeah, you're in this room and the smell of mold permeates the air and this and that, and there's a creepy thing in the corner and whatever, but under it all they're learning these little subtle lessons. It's like all these you know folk tales, fairy tales,
Yeah,
teaching you these little, taking you little steps
And in between, we've got all kinds of cool adrenaline rushes that make the thing entirely a hedonistic affair as well. So you can have both. Fine. Again, it's all about what balance are we going to find between having fun and learning about ourselves.
Right. Absolutely. And at what point, just because you kind of brought it up by that, at what point is it too much, right? Talking about the job of the DM as well. You know, when is it okay for you to put players in an uncomfortable position? And when is it too much and when is it okay, right? Because any good story is going to have parts that they don't like because any person like I don't want to endanger myself. I don't want to I don't want any of my characters, to be at risk. Uh, right? I've invested so much
Yeah.
time and energy in them and all these things, but the fact of the matter is that's what makes a good story. That's how you learn is by overcoming difficult situations.
Yeah, it really depends on your players, and you can screw that up. Like, you can, without good communication, it becomes, I guess, more likely. And I've failed at that. Like, I've not done enough talking and gotten into some truly intense situations. And I've been lucky that my players have been forgiving about it. But check with your players, see what they think.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
You know,
So, yeah, go
if
ahead.
if your players are not having fun, you are wasting your time, right? Like, so the lessons
Exactly.
you put those underneath and in between, and if they don't add to the fun, you've done something wrong. But if your players are stressed out, what's the point? Why would you play a game that you're not having fun, right? And your job, you will get satisfaction not from their deaths, but from their enthusiasm and enlightenment. You know.
Right. To that, I will say just a little bit because I like to make most of my things very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Right, stack the deck against them and see what happens. Right, give them opportunities to like here's some information. Give them opportunities to be clever, and sometimes that fails. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a sense of comfort, at least to me personally, in the fact that I did what my character would do. I did this, that, or the other thing, and knowing that it wasn't like the DM wanted to kill me, right? But
Right.
knowing that, like, even if it's a TPK, like this is what would have happened because, you know, we did this certain thing. I don't want to say wrong, but
Maybe you did the right thing and it got you killed. Like,
right,
that's kind of
right, yeah,
glorious, right?
exactly. So even though the story ends, and perhaps maybe there's a moment where like nobody's really happy about it. Like I'm not happy. Like when my players die, like just because I'm like, oh, like sometimes I'll goad them or I'll give them shit or whatever, or be like, oh, you're gonna die, and it might sound like a joke, but at the end, like if they actually die, I'm pretty bummed out about it. Like I don't want anybody to die, but I think it's the reward, right, is like we overcame that and now it's like yeah we marginally escaped and that is the epic that
Yeah.
is that is like the golden moment.
And that can't exist without the threat of
Right,
death. Like,
without the
you can't
threat,
have
right,
it.
right. And I feel like if you don't hold true to that threat and follow through, unfortunately when it has to happen, I feel like that
They'll know.
yeah feel like that takes away from the game. Like my players know, like I do not, unfortunately, I don't have plot armor. There's been a case where I had a certain magic item that was tied to the story, right? It was like a pendant. It was like their one way to resurrect in the whole campaign, and they had to use it early. And I didn't feel like I was just giving that to them, right? Because they
Right.
used up that resource and it had implications in the story.
Speaking of which, have you seen the clone spell in D&D 5th edition? I just noticed that like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, what the hell is
Yeah, it's
this?
pretty
Get
cool.
out of jail free. So that's a one-up.
Ah, all right. time is it? So it's 9:29. We're gonna be wrapping up shortly here. So I just figured I'd give everybody another chance. If anybody's in the channel, if you want to jump in on the Discord, um, where's your safety net? I'm sorry, I left it at my other home. And yeah, if anybody wants to come jump in the Discord, I'll put a link up right now. If you want to come in, jump in the voice, or if you want to text out your stuff, I'll just give you guys a moment.
Yeah, speaking of deaths, in the mage game, the they're also wraiths is their like their fourth thing, like vampires, werewolves, ghosts. So if you die, you can still keep playing. That's good news.
Right, there you go. And sometimes that's fun because I have done that in the past where, you know, everybody dies or everybody was meant to die or was likely to die, and then they actually wake up and they're unconscious, or they wake up and they're whatever. I feel like some of it's cliche, but sometimes that is fun. But I don't do it all the time because I don't want people to expect like, we're gonna, if we die, there's no consequence, right?
Right.
All right. I think anyone's joining, but just giving it a second.
No worries.
All right, so yeah, so we covered a bunch of stuff here. I'm looking through my notes here to see if there's anything. Was there anything lingering for you that you wanted to go back over to cover or anything like that to sum up?
No, I feel really good about where I am, and I think this will help me a lot with my future games and some of the thinking that I want to do. And the cool thing about this, just like the best part about teaching, is you never master it. Like as a game master, ironically you never master it. There's always more to learn because it's so complex. And I used to have jobs when I was growing up that I mastered optics, like making eyeglasses. After 5 years, whatever, it became boring because there was never a challenge. This is always a challenge. So I appreciate you inviting me and talking with me and giving me cool ideas and things to ponder about making this even cooler than it already is, and it's already very to be a GM.
Absolutely. I think much like the philosopher, much like a lot of people, that there's always more to learn, right? There's always, you can be better, you can get better. I watch a lot of games that other people stream, or I just love getting those little tips like, oh, I love the way that guy did this, or wow, she nailed it here, or you know what I mean? Like, there's always more to learn.
Yeah, I wish I had a bit more time to do more learning. Maybe over the summer.
Well, it'd be fun. I'll invite you back. We'll come up with some more topics, and I'll invite you back. I got a little list of some people that are interested in guest starring, but my plan is to do this every week until I run out of stuff. So,
who's next?
Who's
Anthony?
next? That's a good. I don't know. I don't know if Anthony. I have a pool of people. I haven't picked the next one yet.
Right on.
There's a lot of channel work. So yeah, if anybody's listening, if you know how to do stuff, I have absolutely no idea how to do all this crap. So I did set all this stuff up myself, and it took me so long, so much resource. Anyway. So if you have some feedback, I really appreciate it. Or if you're like, yeah, I know how to do this, you should totally tell me how to do it, because I have no idea.
Not gonna get that from this old man.
All right, so I think that's nobody's jumping in, so I think that's a really good spot to end it, unless you have any final words here.
No, I just want to thank you again.
Yeah,
I had a good time, and thanks for everybody for coming and listening and talking to us some.
Absolutely, man. I had a blast. Thanks for running for that snot-nosed kid all those years ago. That's how I got where I am today.
Right on. I'm glad. Hopefully there's 1,000 others just like you out there having fun for people.
I hope so. I know I kind of inspired one person to do some tabletop gaming, and
feels good.
She's like, I owe it to you, and it's like, you should owe it to you. Like, I'm glad that I was your reason for taking a step, but like I feel like it's a thing, anybody can do it, it's just flexing those muscles, getting that spark up to the point where it's a small flame, right?
Yep,
So,
and finding some hapless victims who will let you experiment on them. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right,
thanks, man.
man. Well, it was a blast. Thanks so much for coming on. And
Anytime. Have a good night. I
you
look
too.
forward to next week. Yeah.
All right. Peace,
Bye.
man. Oh, Dre's in the chat. Dre's in the chat. Dre's in the chat.
Did I close
Hey,
the chat?
it's Anthony. Woo!
Dr. Anthony. Yeah, the champions thing, man. Like, I'm too engrossed in the. I'm too engrossed in the mage thing right now, but maybe the champions thing will come back once that's finished.
No, I'm just saying you need to burn all your mage books and play Midnight Dawning again. No, I'm kidding. No. Do I know Pearly Whirly? That's the whole reason I came in here.
Yeah, he's Jared P. He's
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, he's a guy in the Discord. We don't personally know him, but
Oh, okay.
he's cool. He's a cool guy.
All right.
That's all you came in here for?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. It was cool.
Oh, all right. Well, I gotta shut it off, so everybody's still.
Okay, bye.
Watch this guy.
Good to see you, Anthony. We'll play soon.
Yeah, of course.
Right on, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all. All right, so I'm gonna kick it off. I'm gonna end it here. Yeah. So just summing up real quick. You are just friendly. So gaming versus role playing. What's the difference? That there are consequences. What's the GM's job? I mean, that's kind of for everybody to decide, but in my opinion, it's communication, if you can have it in one word. And what do role-playing games teach us? And I would argue how to think, and if you guys have any feedback, any comments, you want to join the channel, you want to come on and have a talk, then, come join us in the Discord, man. Come let us know. So everybody have a great night, and peace out.